Thank you very much for these introductory remarks. I think what we heard from the representatives during this first opening session have really illustrated what we're looking to do with InsSciDE, to be able to have exchanges with diplomats, with the players of international scientific diplomacy. And what I'd like to show you is the main results, what we've accomplished thanks to our project. I will be brief in order to give the floor to the Deputy Director of the program, to Mr. Leonard Laborie, who was responsible, among other things, of dissemination, of awareness raising, and bringing together the different players in this field. And I'll give them the time to be able to show the different results from the different fields of work. But first of all, the main success of InsSciDE was a sort of scientific diplomacy in action, in order to get 14 institutions from different countries to work together, to get them to work on topics that are sometimes different, where they have different definition, different concepts. Well, this required a certain amount of diplomacy and quite a lot of effort. And this also pushed us to be creative within our group in order to have this sort of historical but also a multidisciplinary approach. So InsSciDE was a process. We used to say that it was a sort of research in action. This might be a bit an old expression, but that's a bit what we're doing.
Our first result was to make the stakeholders aware of a history of a situation. This is our first major result. A scientific project bears first and foremost on the discovery of knowledge, and we should not forget that. Thanks to the research of historians, experts in politics and sociology, our project allowed us to find knowledge about sectors that were very little known. We've used different scientific disciplines, and the main result we see today are those 28 state case studies that are presented in a book. They are all linked to published scientific works that have been published in magazines or books that are the results of symposia and conferences. So the purpose of all this is to shed the light on new knowledge and implement it. We did not speed the process, we took things in due time. Second important element in the development of knowledge is the reflexive effect. InsSciDE serves scientific diplomacy, but it also serves historians, politicians, experts in politics, and all this will change the way we look at history. We will have to speak about questions such as materiality, knowledge, skills, and we do this with our colleagues of UMR CIRIS in different areas of the world, in different vocational sectors. In addition to that, we have policy briefs, we have documents that are fully available on our website and on the website of the Alliance. And this is also very important. This aims at creation. The second important element, and I'll very quickly stop at that, is the transmission of this knowledge. Our job as teachers, researchers cannot be understood without passing on the knowledge, the transmission of the knowledge. The researchers of CNRS are more and more concerned by this process of knowledge transfer. It is an important thing in human sciences, and in all sciences. I don't see any science without transmission of knowledge. A lot of our actions aim at passing on the knowledge to the young people, exchanges with others, passing on to all the stakeholders. And we've organized a lot of events around this transmission process, which Claire will be speaking about. And lastly, and this will be my last point, the adaptation to new cultures. We started out with an assumption. We have to take the work of politicians, of diplomats. We're not going to write small notes to teach them and tell them, well, thanks to us, you'll be doing your job better. No, we were thinking that the main problem of those diplomacy community was the sharing process. And we thought that through sharing, the result would be much better. The experience would be multiplied through sharing. And we worked on the margins at our level, and we made the ideas of scientific diplomacy evolve in order to solve what we call major challenges, but we did not forget the nations, the states. We have dealt with phenomenon that we consider as transnational phenomena, international phenomena. And when you deal with such international phenomenon, you have to take into account the best and the worst. And nations remain a key element of our history and of our present days. And one should not be naive. One should not do research just to do research. Our research aims at serving the stakeholders. Otherwise, it would be counterproductive. And my last sentence, we created a community for sharing in a transcultural process targeting real life. And now I will give the floor to Leonard, Laborie, and Claire Mays, who will be presented our results, and all our results are on open access on our website. In the days, weeks, months to come, you'll have the opportunity to look at them, read them, and I do hope use them.
Well, thank you. I feel like it's a big challenge for me to summarize 4.5 years of research in less than 10 minutes, maybe even better, 5 minutes. This for at least 3 reasons. Why is it so complicated? First reason is that our project involved more than 30 researchers in different disciplinary areas. From history was very prominent in this group, but we too had political scientists, social sciences, science specialists, experts of studies of science and technology, and archaeology. And each researcher had its own methods and topics. And it was clear from the start of the project, it was our parti pris to respect everyone's methodology and perspective. And even more, we asked for them to be eclectic, to research in very diverse directions. Being eclectic more than exhaustive was the goal. And it makes it difficult for me to then summarize. Second reason is that the project is hardly finished. So I think we certainly need to take a step back to have a clearer picture of what we've achieved together. Last, it's difficult for sure to isolate what we've achieved within InsSciDE from the research conducted outside, if you allow me to play with words and acronyms. We've surfed the hype wave of science diplomacy. but we've solved it not alone, in conjunction with many other arenas and circles of research. At the same time, though, we have some specifics to offer. Here again, 3 points that make InsSciDE specific. From the start, we've nurtured critical thinking about science diplomacy. We never eluded that beyond or within often praised cooperation, science diplomacy conveys and solidifies power relations. Science diplomacy is a conceptual tool to investigate past and present practices, but it also is today a tool to shape these practices. And the literature on the topic itself has been for a long time practitioner-driven. Second, we've been critical, but we also design spaces and formats to interact within InsSciDE and create a dynamic, interdisciplinary dynamic, so that InsSciDE at the end, I think, is more than the sum of its brilliant parts. Last, we build these spaces and dynamic around a common hypothesis and guiding questions. And I will briefly survey the 5 main questions. Claire, can you please tell me when I must stop? Okay, 5 questions that we've raised, and I can't go into the detail for the answers. I have mentioned power, how cooperation and competition were articulated in science diplomacy practices and discourses. What were and what are the implicit assumptions behind science diplomacy discourses? This, you will be able to find elements of answers in our productions. Another key line of thought, 2nd out of 5. When, why, how science diplomacy emerged and evolved, both in practice and as a concept in the European context. That was another major question for us as historians. I would like to develop, but I can't due to time. But the main outcome of our research is that, yes, the Cold War was decisive. It was a key period of time when UNESCO came out of age, when science diplomacy took shape. But we clearly show from our research that the 19th century was foundational for science diplomacy, when both science and diplomacy professionalized. Third, of course, we've wondered about the actors, and you will find ideas, elements about who were the champions of science diplomacy, and the scientists, the diplomats, who were and who are the science diplomats. We've looked at the usual suspects, of course, career diplomats, science counselors and attachés, but we've also highlighted the role of backstage actors, such as experts in committees. We've also put the light on the role of treaty making for sure institutions, but also objects to discuss and to arrange science diplomacy. The last 2 questions, question of Europe, of course, we were funded by the EU, and Europe, we never took it as granted. What is Europe in our stories? We asked the question of how science diplomacy participated to the constructions with an S of Europe through time, but also to its divisions. Last, very, I think, specific to InsSciDE is the stress that we were able to put on the study of science in the field as a practice, as a cultural and social practice. And what does it mean when science intersects with diplomacy in practice? And we have many elements to offer in this direction, and we tend to think that we discovered the fourth dimension of science diplomacy. You know, the triple AS and Royal Society definition with 3 elements, and we add another one, diplomacy in the practice of science in diplomatically framed environment. With this, I conclude. I believe we did not revolutionize the field. This is not my academic culture to make such statements. There was a lot of literature already, and we build on this. But I think we did make a significant contribution to the field. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's time that we start playing with the fact that we're in a UNESCO conference room and that every single one of you has a live microphone and will be on camera to speak to your comrades here and also to the 40 or 50 people who are listening to us on Zoom. So what I'd like to do, as we've so often done during InsSciDE, well, one of the things that we often do during InsSciDE is talk on WhatsApp. So I'm just going to say, advance the slides. Just a moment. Okay, so, there it goes. It's good. Thank you. Oh, that's right. They can actually hear me now. Yes, what I would like to do is something that we did during our wonderful Warsaw Science Diplomacy summer schools. And that was, we had a flipped evaluation. You may know what flipped learning is. To me, it's very surprising that there should be a name for this. Apparently, the traditional model in university or classroom teaching is to request that students, what is it, Erasmus? What is the flipped learning thing? Can you tell us very quickly, you know, the direction that it's supposed to go, but where it does go when it's flipped?
Well, I mean, the traditional model is that students try to stay awake listening to a lecture, and the flipped is that they listen to the lecture in advance, and then they can stay awake and talk about the lecture.
Okay, I guess that's where we are now, with no insinuations about our speakers. But indeed, I see alumni of our summer schools here. I see teachers of our summer schools here. I would really like to call on you to recreate a little bit, talk to us now at a year or 2 years of distance, exactly, about what InsSciDE has meant for you, what that virtual school and that discovery, that very intensive discovery for 5 days in June 2020 and in June 2021, discovery of case studies, discovery of practitioner experience, discovery of risk, safety, and security, hardline talk from practitioners. Let us share a little bit together today what you did in the flipped evaluation. And that was when we heard from the alumni, what they had learned, what they had gained. And we also learned from the case study presenters, how that had changed a little bit their perspective on their own research and teaching. Can we do that? May I call on our alumni? I see Adil, I see Nastasia, I see Christian, I see Abi in the corner, I see Zviko, maybe Farah is here. Please let me invite you just to take the mic and go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll speak on behalf of the Warsaw School, if it's all right. So I had since I'm a practicing diplomat and also with a scientific background, I had an absolute pleasure with the Warsaw Science Diplomacy School. The content was amazing. I have done these courses over the period of 2 to 3 years with the AAAS and other the Warsaw School was different. I don't say it just to, please everyone here, but the approach taken was very practical. The case study approaches, I had the pleasure of working with Marielle Leroux Biodiversity Group. The cohort that we formed during the process, we have stayed in touch till date. We have collaborated on science diplomacy projects. That was the most, productive outcome of it, that the interdisciplinary global networking, it really existed, and it has prevailed to this day. The other thing was that the contents, they were, not just diverse, but they were actionable, that you could relate or understand what, science diplomacy would mean. And the flipped learning approach really enabled us to, question models and discuss things. It was not just, on the deficit model that, assuming that we don't know science diplomacy and we're being taught. So there was, everyone brought something to the table. That was the most important part of the school. And with different experiences, it was like learning with the evaluators. Had fun with all of them, and then the simulation approaches, especially on risk, safety, and strategy as well. That was something new that brought a lot of value to the table. So all in all, it has been a great experience. The publication as well goes on to show, like when people will read it, that when we were discussing it during the course, it really gave us a deep insight into understanding the whole landscape. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Adil. Stephanie, I'm sorry that I forgot your name a moment ago. Please go ahead, our alumni.
Bonjour à tous. Et je peux parler en
Good
français.
morning, everybody. I can speak French, I hope. I'm Anastasia Doms, and I work in the French Embassy in Georgia, Scientific and University Cooperation Attaché. Now, what the summer school meant for me was also a space to take a step back, because when you're out there in the field working to build bridges between nations, very often you just there at the rock face, and you don't really have enough scope to take a wider look at things. So I must say that that was definitely a big asset for me. And the summer school also showed me that it was possible to create spaces for future collaboration. And that is something which I hadn't really thought I could benefit from. So it's very promising to be in contact with the scientists and diplomats. So I'd like to wish the collaboration every success, also with the alliance that is going to be set up.
Yes, we do have a coffee break, but I think it would just be great if we could have 2 or 3 more witnesses. Would you go ahead?
Can I? So I was also part of this Warsaw Science Diploma School, and yeah, when we finished, one thing that I realized it was very intense, because not only did we learn from the presenters, but we had even working lunches. Sometimes we had these assignments that we wouldn't finish, and we had to go over and do it during lunch and even after classes. Then besides that, I can add that after we finished, we were paid by some senior practitioners. Personally, I was paid by a practitioner who was in nanotechnology and had lots of experience, and we had to discuss and all this mentorship and stuff. I was in the 2020 cohort. So I can say it was really a different learning experience, because we were there to share ideas, not just to learn, but to share what we have amongst ourselves. And I can say the guests were as much an important part of the process as the students themselves. And the fact that we had been selected from 27 countries and there were 28 of us, it was quite amazing to learn from all these colleagues. Thank you.
We're so proud. We're really
Nous sommes vraiment très, très fiers lorsqu'on entend des témoignages comme le vôtre. Oui, Simone, vous vouliez parler? Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres anciens étudiants? Oui, Stéphanie. Abi, est-ce que vous voudrez dire quelque chose? Et puis après, on passera à Simone.
I would like to echo what my fellow classmates have said, but as well, I'd like to add that I was in Sam's group looking at the social imaginaries. And I think this is one of the things I got most out of your project was an introduction to concepts and ways of thinking and seeing science that were very new to me. And I think when you are presented with a new way of seeing something, then possibilities emerge that you hadn't had before. I wanted to take my climate science into action with society in some other ways, and you've given me the tools and the vision to do that. So I'd like to thank you for that. And then coming here and actually meeting you in person and meeting my classmates in person, it's such a valuable thing to gain, to have this network of people that are so committed and so passionate about doing something, because it's not everywhere that you can find a group of people that are not only very smart at what they do, but they have truly the heart in what they're doing. And this is really, really valuable. I'm really thankful for that. So thank you.